Some souls don't just survive storms, they become the storm, the kind of storm that makes the sky crack open and the earth tremble. That's you, the chosen one, the one with a heart so fierce it sets fire to everything trying to bury it. Enemies talk. They whisper behind your back like vultures circling a fading light, hoping you'll crack, break, or fold. But here's the truth they can't swallow. Your heart is a weapon, unseen, unbreakable, unstoppable. They're scared of what they don't understand. They call it mad heart, like it's a curse. But really, it's a death sentence for their lies, their betrayal, and their fake smiles. They watch you, biting their tongues because they know deep down you are the reckoning they never saw coming. So, to the ones who feel hunted, misunderstood, and underestimated, this is your call. Stand tall. This message is for the chosen, the relentless, the ones with fire in their veins. If you want this truth to roar louder, like and subscribe to help spread this message to more chosen warriors. Every time you do, it sends a signal to the universe, to the world, that the chosen are waking up, taking back their power. Let's make sure no enemy can whisper in the shadows without being heard. Now, listen close. Being chosen is not some blessing that makes life easy. It's a burden and a power, a double-edged sword that haunts your enemies and ignites your soul. You carry a heart that's been through war zones. Not just battles of flesh, but wars of spirit and trust. It's the kind of heart that doesn't just survive betrayal, it thrives on it, turning every cut into armor, every scar into a badge of honor. Imagine your heart as a wildfire trapped in a cage, and every time someone tries to cage you, you burn a little brighter, a little wilder. Your fire doesn't just warm you, it scorches the ground your enemies stand on. They fear your glow because it exposes their darkness. Most people fold when the world shoves betrayal down their throat like bitter medicine. They numb out, disappear, or become shadows of the pain they carry. But you carry your wounds like a weapon. You walk through betrayal like it's just another wall to break down. You bleed, you hurt, but you never stop believing in the light, because that's what makes your heart mad. Mad, not just with pain, but with relentless hope. The world doesn't just see your heart. They feel it in the way you move, the way you smile, even the way you breathe. You're the chosen one who doesn't just take hits, you transform them. You're the spark in the dark that sets everything on fire. And enemies, they can't handle that kind of power. They try to silence you, to make you small. But your heart? It's a battle cry that shakes the foundations of their lies. The harder they push, the stronger you grow. That's the mad heart they're scared of. So if you've felt alone, hunted, or like no one understands the war raging inside you, know this: you are not broken. You are the chosen, the one with the heart that burns so fiercely it leaves no room for fear. This isn't just a story, it's a revolution, and you are the spark that will set the world ablaze. And now, to all the chosen warriors tuning in, this is your moment. If your heart beats loud, if you feel that fire burning under your ribs, don't just scroll past. Hit that like, smash subscribe, and drop mad heart in the comments if you're ready to own what makes you unstoppable. The message you're about to hear isn't for the faint of heart. It's for the ones who refuse to back down. So stick with me, because if you truly carry that mad heart, you'll feel the pull to stay till the last word. Let's get into it. Number 1. When the universe bends to your will, the system breaks under your feet. They thought they could break you. Instead, they built the storm. They'll never survive. They've been playing their little games, twisting rules, stacking odds, hoping you'd fall in line like every other pawn in their broken system. But you shattered the mold. You weren't built to follow the script they wrote. You're the glitch in their code, the wild card that makes the universe itself shift gears to keep up. And that scares them. You see, being chosen isn't some easy ride handed out on a silver platter. It's the universe putting its weight behind you, aligning stars and fate like a weapon forged in cosmic fire. When you step forward, the very fabric of their system trembles, because you don't just move with the tide, you create the tidal wave. They call it mad heart, like it's a curse. But really, it's the power that haunts their every step, the storm that shadows their plans. While they sat comfortable, playing safe, you carried wounds that would have crushed most souls. And yet, you kept walking like a warrior on a battlefield they couldn't see. What's the secret? You learned to bleed in silence, to keep your soul stitched together with threads of sheer willpower and grit when everything screamed at you to fall apart. Life didn't hand you breaks. It threw you into the fire and dared you to survive. While others called in sick when inconvenience struck, you dragged yourself through wars, mental, emotional, spiritual, that no one knew existed. And the world, it only sees the surface, the quiet strength, the fierce smile, the unstoppable drive. But they don't see the cost. They don't understand the nights spent wrestling with ghosts, the mornings you woke up heavy with grief, but still showed up, did your job, talked like everything was fine, when inside you were a mess of broken pieces. Here's the truth they don't want you to hear. Sometimes that strength wasn't courage. It was survival, pure necessity. Not all heroes wear capes. Some just survive in silence, in shadows, carrying more than they should, yet never letting it show. You didn't just survive hard times, you survived alone. No hand to hold, no safe harbor, no cheers. You rebuilt yourself mid-fall, mid-heartbreak, mid-chaos, with no instructions, no applause, and no promise of relief. That's not just heart. That's a miracle wrapped in skin, a fire that refuses to be extinguished. Your endurance is a secret weapon, the kind that breaks enemies' spirits because they can't understand how you keep going when the world expects you to crumble. And here's what makes you truly chosen. You kept your heart open, tender, hopeful, even after betrayal tried to make you cold, after abandonment tried to make you numb. That's not weakness, that's war-tested power. They don't get it. They think your resilience is a given, something you chose like a badge. No, it's a hard-earned crown forged in pain and betrayal, refined by the silence you endured, tested by every wound that refused to close. They whisper your name now because they know you're no ordinary soul. You're the wildfire in a drought, the hurricane in their calm, the chaos in their order. They tried to cage your spirit, but your fire burns too wild. And every step you take is a message they can't ignore. You are the chosen one, the one who breaks their system by simply refusing to break. So when doubts creep in, when you wonder why the universe seems to test you more than others, remember this: the universe bends to the will of the chosen. It's not punishment, it's power. It's the cosmic alignment that fuels your rise while their world shakes beneath your feet. The system is crumbling because it was never designed to contain someone like you. You weren't made to follow. You were made to lead, to disrupt, to rewrite the rules. And that's the truth that haunts your enemies in the dead of night. They fear your mad heart because it's not just a beat, it's a battle cry, a relentless force that no wound, no betrayal, no setback can silence. So keep walking, chosen one. Keep burning. Keep showing up with that mad heart that breaks and rebuilds itself faster and stronger than anyone else's. because the universe is on your side. And when the universe fights for you, no system, no enemy can stand against you. Number 2, you starved the beast, and that's why it's still screaming. They were waiting on your rage like vultures circling a meal. Instead, you gave them silence, and now they're choking on their own guilt. Let's call it what it is. They expected you to break character, to crack under pressure, to finally explode so they could step back with smug relief and say, "See, that's the real them. That's the monster we warned you about." But you didn't give them that satisfaction. You carried grace like a sword. You wrapped your pain in poise. You stood tall with every reason to swing back, and still chose not to. That shook them in a way rage never could. Because the truth is, rage would have made it easier for them. It would have given them a role to play, the victim. But your calm, your grace, that left them with nowhere to hide. They needed a scene. You gave them silence. They wanted war. You gave them absence. And that absence echoed louder than any scream ever could. Because here's the secret, you didn't respond out of weakness. You responded from power, the kind of power that doesn't flinch, the kind of power that has nothing to prove. You let the weight of their betrayal fall back into their own hands. And that weight is heavy. It's what's keeping them up at night. They feel it every time they think about how they couldn't break you. You had the ammo, you had the dirt, you had the receipts stacked like dynamite, but you chose not to detonate. And in doing so, you revealed the most terrifying truth about yourself. You don't need revenge. You are the consequence. You see, when you're truly chosen, the universe has a way of defending you in silence. And your silence wasn't empty. It was sacred. It was strategy. While they expected a scene, you gave them a mirror. And let me tell you, people can't stand the reflection of their own ugliness when there's no one else left to blame. You could have dragged them, publicly humiliated them, burned the bridge and danced on the ashes. But you didn't. You walked away without flinching, without noise, without a single plea for understanding. That confused them. Because toxic people only understand control, and when they couldn't control your reaction, they lost control of the narrative. You chose boundaries over breakdowns, self-respect over self-destruction, grace over games, and in a world that glorifies clapbacks and dragging each other through the mud, that kind of restraint is revolutionary, dangerous, unpredictable. They wanted you to spiral. They needed you to crumble so they could keep telling themselves they were right to hurt you. But you robbed them of that delusion. And now their guilt is eating them alive. And your silence is the loudest sound they hear. People ask how you stayed soft, stayed kind, didn't build walls, didn't get cold. The answer, you're built different. Your heart's not naive, it's disciplined. You don't let pain turn you into what hurt you. You didn't lose yourself in the war. You came out with your soul intact, and that is the kind of victory no one can deny. And that's the thing about being chosen. Your strength isn't in how loud you fight, it's in how deeply you heal without performance. You didn't need validation. You didn't need sympathy. You just needed space. And when you got it, you didn't fill it with bitterness. You filled it with evolution. They don't understand how someone so betrayed can still love, still trust, still walk with softness. That's what burns them most. That's what makes you dangerous. Because you didn't become cold, you became selective. You didn't become bitter, you became boundaried. You didn't lose heart, you grew one so powerful it refuses to run on vengeance. Instead, it runs on alignment, on energy protection, on inner peace. And when you carry that kind of energy, you don't chase justice, you attract it. You don't need to pull strings behind the scenes. You don't need to convince anyone. Your peace is your proof. Your silence is your storm. And your grace. That's the spiritual weapon they never saw coming. Because grace isn't weakness. Grace is a scalpel. It slices through illusions, through projections, through all their fake apologies and rehearsed guilt trips. It reveals everything they tried to hide with noise. They thought they'd see you on the floor. Instead, they're watching you rise, without a single scream, without a single smear campaign, just quiet power and relentless elevation. That's why they're still watching. That's why they're still talking. That's why your name lives rent-free in their mind. You walked through fire and came out scented like peace. That doesn't happen by accident. That's the mark of the chosen. That's what mad heart really looks like. So let them stare. Let them whisper. Let them replay the moment you didn't snap. Because that moment broke them more than any fight ever could. You were the storm they thought they could contain, and when you didn't strike back, they realized they never stood a chance. You don't fight like the rest. You don't need explosions to shake the ground. Your grace is the earthquake, your silence is the thunder, and your rise, that's the prophecy being fulfilled right in front of them. So keep choosing peace, keep choosing power, keep choosing grace. Because every time you do, you prove that mad heart of yours isn't just strong, it's divine. Number 3, you took the hit and still handed out light. Now they're shook. Pain tried to change your shape, but you stayed golden. That's terrifying to people who only know how to survive by turning cold. They expected to break you, to turn you bitter, to twist your heart into something sharp and guarded. You had every excuse to shut down, every reason to let love die inside you, and still, you didn't. You went through betrayal that could have changed your entire personality. Silent stabs, doors slammed in your face, fake love dripping with hidden motives. You faced it all, and somehow you stayed soft. That's the real shock. People don't know what to do with someone who doesn't fold under fire, someone who still shows up with grace even after being burned. You kept offering light with hands that were still bleeding. You kept hoping, trusting, loving, even when love had become a battlefield. You didn't let betrayal define your future. That's what haunts them. Most people, they get burned once and become ice forever. But you felt every cut and refused to become like the ones who delivered it. You didn't put up walls. You built boundaries. You didn't go numb. You stayed awake. And in this world, that's a flex most can't touch. See, anyone can act cold and call it healing. Anyone can hide behind sarcasm and call it strength. But it takes a rare kind of warrior to stay warm after the war, to carry softness like armor, to look pain in the face and still choose kindness over cruelty. That's not weakness, that's not softness, that's power with depth. You're not naive, you're not foolish, you're forged. You've got the kind of heart that's been cracked open but never hollowed out. You've been to the edge and came back more you than ever. That's the thing they don't understand. Your softness isn't the absence of damage. It's the proof that you fought through the damage and didn't lose your soul. That's why they whisper. They say, they've got mad heart. But what they're really saying is, how the hell did they survive all that and still smile like that? You didn't just bounce back. You rose different, not cold, not guarded, but with deeper vision, sharper instincts, and a love that's been refined by fire. You laugh, but it's deeper now. You love, but it's wiser now. You move with peace, but make no mistake, your peace came from war. And that's why your presence hits different. You carry the kind of energy that doesn't need to scream to be felt. The kind of grace that exposes everyone who tried to destroy you, because nothing's louder than someone who stayed soft in a world that tried to make them hard. So keep shining, keep loving, keep choosing softness, because in a world full of trauma-wounded hearts wearing armor, you're open one. That's the revolution. Number 4, you looked crazy until the future started quoting you. They called you delusional. Now they're quietly copying your blueprint. You weren't trying to fit in. You were never built for that. While they were busy chasing trends, clout and validation from rooms that didn't even deserve your energy, you were walking away from safety, from applause, from comfort. And to them, that looked insane. They didn't see your conviction, they just saw rebellion. They didn't understand your alignment, they just assumed you'd lost control. Because only a crazy person walks off the beaten path with no map, no safety net, and no need for approval, right? Only someone unhinged leaves behind a perfectly fine relationship, burns bridges with toxic family, quits jobs that look good on paper, and chooses the unseen over the secure. But you weren't chasing logic, you were chasing truths. And truth doesn't always come dressed in guarantees. That's why they laughed, rolled their eyes, branded you as too deep, too intense, too much. You didn't follow the herd, so the herd called you mad. But deep down, your soul was locked onto a frequency only the chosen hear. That inner pull wouldn't leave you alone, not even when you were broke, doubting yourself, crying on the floor in silence. You looked like a mess on the outside, but inside, you were in alignment with something far bigger than their opinions. And now the shift is happening. The things you spoke in faith are showing up in form. The people you walked away from are being exposed. The moves that once looked reckless are being revealed as prophetic. Suddenly, the whispers have gone quiet. Suddenly, your name isn't being mocked, it's being studied. Because here's the truth, they weren't afraid of your madness, they were afraid of your clarity. You saw things before they happened, you felt energy before words were spoken, you made decisions without proof, and those decisions are turning into evidence. They can't figure out how you did it. But the truth is, you didn't do anything by their standards. You obeyed the unseen. You moved when your spirit said go, even when your mind screamed wait. You didn't need a cosign. You didn't need a crowd. You just needed conviction. And now you are the proof. That faith without applause still works. That walking alone still leads somewhere divine. That being misunderstood doesn't mean you were wrong. It means you were early. You risked your image, your stability, your comfort, but you kept your alignment. And now the very people who once called you crazy are watching the universe hand you everything you were never supposed to have. Let them watch. You didn't need the crowd when you started. You don't need their praise now. Your mad heart always knew. Number 5, you set the table. They brought nothing. Now they starve without your light. They dined on your loyalty like royalty, then ghosted when it was their turn to serve. Now they're outside, starving, pretending they forgot your name. You gave love like breath, natural, constant, undemanding. While they showed up empty-handed, you were still pouring, still checking in, still holding space for people who barely remembered you existed until they needed something. You weren't blind. You saw the imbalance. You just weren't petty enough to stop loving because they didn't know how. And that confused them. They're used to love with strings, with terms, with expiration dates, but you didn't love to get something. You loved because that's what you are, not desperate, not weak, just wired different. You sat people at your table who would have never done the same for you. You showed up when they were MIA. You gave grace to people who wouldn't have picked up the phone if you were bleeding, and somehow you didn't turn cold. They say you've got mad heart, but what they really mean is you break the algorithm. You operate on a frequency that makes them uncomfortable because it calls out everything they lack. In a world built on transactional energy, your unconditional love is a glitch in the system, a threat, a mirror. They didn't earn your presence, but you gave it. You knew they weren't built to handle you, but you showed up anyway. Not because they deserved it, but because you were honoring your own spirit, your assignment, your code. You weren't naive, you were sovereign. You didn't need matching energy to confirm your worth. You didn't need reciprocity to know your value. You loved without applause, without keeping score, without performing, and that made you untouchable. That kind of generosity, it reveals people. It shakes them, because your consistency made them feel safe, but your standards made them feel exposed, guilty, undeserving. And now they're circling back in silence, watching, remembering what it felt like to be fed by someone who didn't need anything in return, someone who held space with no agenda, someone who didn't weaponize their care. You didn't just love them, you loved them with a rare dignity. And that kind of love, you don't just find it again. They thought your loyalty made you soft. Now they see it made you sacred, because in a world that loves to pretend, you were the real thing. The table, the warmth, the soul they'll never sit with again. So let them starve, let them wonder, let them spin their little narratives. You didn't love them because they were worthy. You loved them because you are. Number 6, they gave you conditions. You gave them grace. Now they miss what they couldn't keep clean. They treated your love like a light switch, on when they needed it, off when they felt small. But you weren't a bulb, you were the sun, and now they're living in shadows. You knew from the beginning, their love wasn't love, it was leverage, a contract with invisible ink. Stay quiet, shrink down, don't shine too loud, keep your truth manageable, your fire dim, your spirit contained. And the moment you slipped up, spoke too boldly, glowed too bright, loved too freely, they withdrew. You felt the cold shift, the silence that screamed, too much. You saw it, you felt it, and still you showed up. Not because you were blind, not because you were desperate, but because you believed in love without strings. You were trying to show them something sacred, something they'd clearly never experienced, unconditional presence, real energy, real care. You were hoping that maybe, just maybe, your consistency would unlock something buried in them. But some people don't evolve when you love them. They regress. They get comfortable, lazy, entitled. They start treating your heart like a faucet they can turn on and off based on convenience. Your loyalty becomes expected. Your presence becomes background noise. They start assuming you'll be there, regardless of how little they give in return. That's where they messed up. Because while your love was wide, it was never without limits. You didn't stay out of weakness. You stayed out of intention. You weren't trying to play savior. You were offering them a chance, an opportunity to rise, to grow, to match the depth of what you brought to the table. But they confused your grace for gullibility. They thought you weren't paying attention. You were. You just didn't want to play the same games that hurt you. You didn't want to love with a leash. You didn't want to be the one who used affection like a weapon. You wanted to love better than what the world showed you. And that's what made your love different. It was generous, patient, unedited. But make no mistake, your love wasn't without discernment. You felt every shift, every conditional pullback, every unspoken rule. You just waited to see if they'd rise to meet you or keep treating you like an emotional safety net. They didn't, so you stepped back, not to punish, but to protect your peace. Because mad heart doesn't mean martyr. You weren't meant to shrink for anyone's comfort. And the truth is, love like yours doesn't shrink. It outgrows. And once it does, it doesn't go back. So now they sit in silence, haunted by the light they couldn't hold. Because they asked for small love and lost something immeasurable. Number 7. They tried to drag your name. Now they're drowning in the mud they made. They buried your reputation, hoping to kill your light. But you weren't the seed. They were the dirt. They laughed, loud, bold, public, like it was sport. Like dragging your name through every room would finally make them feel taller. Like the noise would crush your center. They never expected you to stand still while the fire raged. They threw your name around like confetti at a funeral, forgetting that you were still breathing, still growing, still anchored. You weren't just watching the storm unfold. You were letting it show you who was willing to dance in your downfall. And yet, you didn't clap back. You didn't scream. You didn't chase clarity. You didn't beg for anyone to hear your side. You just stood still, with your dignity draped over you like armor, and your silence speaking volumes. That scared them, because most people fold under public shame. They panic. Performance, shrink into versions of themselves that feel acceptable. But you faced the ugliest version of misunderstanding and didn't move an inch off your truth. You were humiliated, misrepresented, mocked, and still you kept building. That's not just heart, that's spiritual steel. You knew the truth would outlive the moment. You knew your name had weight, and it didn't need saving. It needed time. You let the chaos play itself out because you understood the power of quiet strength. You knew when the dust settled, their noise would fade, and your becoming would speak louder than their bitterness ever could. You didn't match their noise because your evolution was already screaming. They tried to make you the villain, but villains don't glow like that. Don't evolve like that. Don't walk with peace that burns through confusion like wildfire. You didn't react. You revealed your growth, revealed your alignment, revealed how dangerous stillness is when it belongs to someone chosen. And now they're scrambling because the same people who once believed the headlines are watching your healing unfold in real time, watching your peace outlive the drama, watching your success, your silence, your grace, and realizing they backed the wrong narrative. But you didn't rub it in. You just kept walking, quiet, clean, untouched. You weren't trying to prove anything. You were too busy embodying everything they swore you'd never be. Your grace wasn't for applause. Your healing wasn't a show. You didn't survive to be seen. You survived because you're engineered for fire. You didn't just make it out of the humiliation. You rose from it. And now the same crowd that cheered your fall has no choice but to respect the way you never broke. Number 8. You went through hell and came out holy. Now they don't know what to do with you. They thought the pain would twist you into a monster. Instead, it carved you into a mirror, and now they can't look at themselves without flinching. You lived through storms that would have drowned most people. Pain that doesn't just scar, it rewires souls. Nights that left you gasping for peace, fighting for sanity, praying not for more strength, but for a break. You didn't just survive trauma, you stared it in the face and refused to become it. They expected you to snap. They waited for the villain arc, for the part where you lose yourself and finally give them a reason to say, "See, told you they weren't who they seemed." But you didn't give them that show. You gave them silence, compassion, boundaries, growth. They threw fire at you, and instead of turning to ash, you turned into light. You could have become bitter, could have turned your pain into poison, could have played the revenge game and won. But your spirit, it was never wired for war. It was forged for peace, and that peace made you dangerous. Because you didn't let what broke you own you. You chose to heal, even when it meant doing it alone, quietly, without applause, without anyone to catch you on the nights you fell apart in private. You did the soul work that most people avoid. That's the part they don't talk about. They think your soft heart means you had it easy, but softness like yours is earned. Pain tested it, loss refined it, betrayal tried to harden it, but it didn't win. You stayed kind when you had every reason to go cold. You stayed open when it would have been easier to shut down. You stayed you when becoming someone else might have felt safer. And now they're confused because you didn't come back vengeful. You came back whole, not perfect, not untouched, but intact, still glowing, still giving, still walking with purpose. They say you've got mad heart, but they don't really understand what that means. What they're really saying is, how did you not become what tried to break you? It's simple. You weren't built on pain. You were built on purpose. You weren't sent here to mirror the world's cruelty. You were sent to disrupt it, to show that surviving doesn't mean hardening, that healing doesn't mean silence, and that real strength. It's not found in how loud you scream, but in how deeply you refuse to lose your light. You didn't just survive the fire, you used it. And now you're not just rewriting your story, you're teaching others how to write theirs without burning down everything they love. That's mad heart. That's you. Number 9. You chose healing over havoc. Now you're untouchable. They wanted you to explode, to become the storm. Instead, you became the calm after it, and that scared them more. You could have burned it all down. You had every reason. You were handed betrayal, disrespect, abandonment, and every ounce of your being had the right to demand revenge. But you didn't take the bait. You didn't chase ego. You chose healing. And that, chosen one, is the move they never saw coming. Because healing isn't passive. It's not soft. It's war. Not against them, but against you. Against the parts of yourself that wanted payback. That wanted to see someone else hurt like you did. That wanted to hold on to bitterness like a shield. But you set that shield down. You faced the mirror. You whispered to your wounds, "This pain ends with me." And that kind of declaration, that's not weakness. That's spiritual power. You let go of comfort, familiar chaos, people you loved but couldn't grow with, patterns that felt like home but were secretly prisons. You walked away, not because it didn't hurt, but because staying would have meant betraying your own evolution. And make no mistake, you felt the loss. The ego grieved. The silence was heavy, but something deeper inside you, your soul, was finally breathing. Most people stay stuck in blame. They point fingers, build identities around their trauma, but you chose ownership. You looked your pain in the face and refused to turn it into someone else's burden. That's why you're feared. That's why they don't know how to read you anymore. because people expect pain to break you or twist you into a weapon, but you came out of the fire with open hands, not clenched fists. You didn't lash out, you leveled up. You didn't avoid the pain, you sat in it. You dug into the root, you rewired the story. You gave up the illusion of being right to become real, and in doing so, you broke generational curses most people die repeating. The truth is, they expected you to be reactive, predictable, to turn your scars into excuses, but instead you used them as blueprints. Now you walk differently. You speak with depth that can't be faked. You love with discernment. You lead with peace. And the people who once triggered you, they can't touch you now because you no longer live in the same emotional dimension. You chose truth over image, wholeness over pride, and that decision cost you everything. But what you gained: freedom, power, integrity, clarity. And that's why they say you've got mad heart, because you didn't fight to be seen, you fought to be whole. And now that you are, there's nothing left to prove, only purpose to fulfill. Number 10, you ruled without noise. Now they bow in the silence they mocked. They thought silence meant weakness until it became the echo that haunted every room they tried to fill without you. You never had to raise your voice to command the room, never needed to clap back, drag anyone, or play the revenge game just to prove your worth. Your silence said everything, and it said it with precision. When you disappeared, it wasn't a breakdown, it was a boundary, a message, a withdrawal of royalty from a table no longer worthy of your presence, and suddenly your absence became the loudest thing they'd ever heard. They used to test you, poke at your peace, try to drag you into the chaos they couldn't live without, but you didn't bite, you didn't flinch, you didn't step into their arena, you made your own. Quietly, powerfully, and now they sit in the silence you left behind, remembering how calm used to walk in the room when you did. They mistook your kindness for naivety, thought your gentleness meant easy access, but they didn't realize that kindness in the hands of the chosen is a weapon, sharp, strategic, silent, and more disarming than anger ever could be. You weren't playing nice. You were building kingdoms while they were busy playing games. You used silence like a sword, not to cut others down, but to sever your ties to anything not meant for your destiny. And when they turned up the volume, hoping to rattle you, you turned inward and became untouchable. They never saw it coming. While they were talking, posting, performing, you were rising in peace, in power, in clarity, and now your glow walks into rooms before you do and makes people question what kind of force you really are. Because when someone carries that kind of stillness, that kind of grace under fire, they don't just survive, they reign. Your energy became law, your absence became legend, and your silence, a mirror they couldn't look into without confronting the truth. That's why they talk about you with a mix of admiration and regret. Because you didn't fight dirty, you fought clean. You didn't clap back, you stepped back. You didn't destroy them, you let their own choices do the job. And while they were hoping you'd fall apart, you were becoming a fortress. Now they understand. Your kindness wasn't weakness, it was strategy, it was armor, it was divine discipline. You made silence your sword, you built kindness into a kingdom. And now they whisper your name like a legend they thought they could erase, but can't. Because your heart didn't just survive the war, it won it, without ever raising its voice. Number 11, you broke every mold and made the blueprint obsolete. They keep trying to explain you in human terms, but you're not here to fit their logic. You're here to bend reality. You walk into a room and they feel it. Before you speak, before you move, before you even make eye contact. That quiet weight, that frequency, that sacred pulse. They don't know what to call it, so they call it mad heart. But that's just the surface. What they're sensing is divine assignment dressed in human skin. You've been through the kind of pain that should have left visible wreckage, trauma that should have rewritten your entire character. They expected the bitterness, the collapse, the public unraveling, but instead you walked out of the fire looking whole, and that unsettles people. Because the world is used to seeing pain worn like a costume, loud, messy, angry, broken. You didn't give them that show. You didn't fold. You didn't perform. You transformed. Quietly, deeply, and in a way that can't be copied. Your scars. They're invisible, but they radiate. They don't speak of weakness. They hum with sacred resilience. You don't look like someone who's been betrayed, abandoned, underestimated. And that's what makes your existence a contradiction they can't reconcile. You're living proof that real strength doesn't scream. It doesn't seek applause. It moves with purpose and disrupts illusions. They want to label you, explain you, fit you into their limited idea of what healing or power looks like. But your life doesn't follow their script, because your path isn't about looking strong. It's about being chosen, being aligned, being used by something greater. You don't just carry a beating heart, you carry a signal, a divine pulse that shakes everything around it. And no matter how hard they try, they can't mimic it. They can't fake it, because it was forged in battles they never fought, crowned in silence, refined through obedience, not approval. Your life challenges everything they've built around image, success, and fake healing. Your wholeness makes them question their performance. Your peace calls out their chaos. Your depth exposes the superficial. And they don't know whether to admire you or fear you. You don't fight to be seen. Your presence does the talking. You didn't climb ranks. You were sent. You were positioned. And now, without saying a word, you carry authority that makes noise uncomfortable and masks fall off. You don't just have mad heart. You have divine code encrypted into your being, and that's why you'll never be duplicated. They'll keep trying to figure you out, but you'll keep moving on sacred frequency, untouched, unbothered, and undeniably chosen. Number 12. You weren't built to be understood. You were built to be felt. They won't admit it, but they feel you. In the silence, in the shift, in the mirror they avoid. Let's be clear, people talk about your heart because they don't know what else to do with it. They've never seen someone carry that much weight and still move with grace. They've never watched a soul get betrayed, abandoned, mocked, doubted, and somehow still keep showing up with light in their eyes. They can't wrap their minds around it, because what you've done isn't normal. Most people don't make it through half of what you carried. They get bitter, number silent, hardened. But you chose to heal, you chose to grow, you chose to love anyway. And that choice, it wasn't weakness, it was war. Because healing is war. It's spiritual warfare. It's choosing to climb out of generational trauma without dragging more pain behind you. It's facing demons without becoming one. It's walking through fire, knowing full well you could come out angry, but choosing to come out anointed. That's what they feel when you walk in the room. That presence, that weight, that unexplainable power that says, I've been through hell, but I brought heaven with me. You weren't built to be understood. You were built to be felt. to be remembered, to be the kind of soul people only meet once in a lifetime and never forget, because you carry something the world can't manufacture, authenticity bought with pain. You carry light forged in betrayal. You carry peace born from chaos. You carry truth that was earned in silence. That kind of heart, that's not mad, that's divine. That's what they don't get. That's why they talk about you in hushed tones. Why your name lingers in conversations long after you've left the room. They don't know if they admire you or fear you, because you shattered the illusion of what strength is supposed to look like. You didn't get loud. You didn't get cold. You didn't play dirty. You got wise. You got quiet. You got free. You outgrew people who were never ready to grow. You stopped explaining yourself to minds that were never meant to hold your frequency. You walked away not because you were weak, but because your soul refused to keep watering deserts that couldn't receive rain. And now you're on another level, not because you forced it, but because you earned it, through grief, through confusion, through every moment that tried to convince you to give up. But you didn't. You stayed soft. You stayed solid. You stayed you. That's what haunts them. That's what inspires others. Because your story isn't just about survival, it's about refusal. Refusing to let darkness define you, refusing to lose your identity in someone else's chaos, refusing to return fire with fire. You didn't become them. You became you, unapologetically, completely, eternally. And now your name carries weight, not because you shouted it, but because you embodied it. The chosen one doesn't chase validation. They become confirmation. So if they're whispering about you, let them. If they're watching from a distance, let them. If they're questioning how you still have light in your eyes after all you've seen, let them wonder, because what they call mad heart is really just the mark of someone who's spiritually bulletproof. You didn't just survive, you transcended. And now, you own your story. You wear your peace like armor. You walk like the storm and the shelter all at once. So walk, chosen one. Keep walking. Because this world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more souls like yours. Real, raw, risen, and completely unforgettable. And with that, chosen one, let this truth settle in your spirit. You didn't just survive, you became the proof. Proof that mad heart isn't a flaw, it's a force. You are what they never saw coming and what they'll never be able to copy. So if this message hit deep, like this video, subscribe for more soul-charged truth, and drop the number 77 in the comments to claim your mad heart out loud. Share this with another chosen one who needs the reminder. We don't fold. We rise. And your rise, it's just getting started.